Now let's talk a little bit about geopolitical risk. It looks like we've got a lot going on right now. There's certainly a lot of emotions relative to the issues that are out there, but I want to talk a little bit more about the percent of GDP relative to each one of the economic areas, looking at, let's say, the US and the China alignment blocks, as well as those that are unaligned. When you think about China and their allies, they're in red, and they represent about 25% of the GDP. Conversely, you look at the US allies, basically the free world, and that represents about 68% of the world GDP. And then you had the unaligned, which is 7%. Now, why do we bring that up? Well, a couple reasons. Number one, when it comes to global business and industry policies, you know, when there's turmoil, it makes it much more difficult for companies to make long-term decisions, and profitability is waning in those areas. So it's actually affecting the US, probably more of the US allies more relative to how it's going to affect the GDP as a whole. But let's make no mistake about it. China and their allies are going to have problems because they're kind of in the thick of what is going on out there from a global unrest. And really, tensions are getting a little bit more acute when it comes to that global risk. So when you look at the speedometer for global risk, it is getting more negative. There is a lot going on out there. And when you look at the three major issues, you got China and Taiwan. Well, there's the chip war that's still going on. The military tensions in the South Sea are worsening. I mean, let's face it, China is rattling their saber, and it doesn't appear that anybody wants to curtail them. And then you have Taiwan. They have an election coming up, and that's a little bit of a wild card, which could go either way. So you've got China and Taiwan. Then you've got Russia and Ukraine. You know, there's a stalemate, kind of what it looks like on the battlefield. It doesn't look like there's an end in sight here, which means this could drag on for years. And then you also have to watch for any kind of escalation in sanctions, because anytime you do that, that's going to impact oil, certainly going to impact the EU economy and the overall activity out there, just like it has in the most recent years. And then most recently, you've got Israel and the fact that Hamas attacked, very surprisingly, Israel. So you've got Israel, Hamas, and the Mideast as a whole. And the question is there going to be regional escalation? And that is a possibility out there. There could be some global entanglement, but it's not likely. Usually when there's Mideast wars, the rest of the world doesn't get involved so much in it. They support, but they don't necessarily get boots on the ground. But there will be an impact on oil. There almost always is when there's a conflict in the Middle East. So geopolitical risk is certainly high, and it's sad, but this is where we are today.